Hello, all those who are watching us live. We are in conversation with Liberty Books. I am Mohammad Omar Iftikhar, a fiction writer from Karachi, and with us we have Lynette Viccaji. Welcome to the show, Lynette. Welcome to
Thank you.
this new episode of in conversation with. And as you know, she's the author of Bubbles, which is sort of a memoir of tracing the life of her mother and her family and how they settled in Pakistan and the rest. I would like Lynette to share with you. I'm as we discussed earlier that we are just going to casually talk about the book. But before that, I would want you to share with the readers who is Lynette Viccaji.
Um, Although this is my second book, my primary identity is that of a teacher. I identify as a teacher. That is my main profession, and I would say that writing books is my hobby. So I have been teaching English literature for many, many years, both O and A level, and that's about what I can tell you about myself, my personal life. I lost my husband in 2018. We were married for 37 very beautiful years. And we have three lovely children, a son and two daughters. All three are married. I have two granddaughters. And that's basically my life. I'm still working and enjoying it. And I guess they'll have to carry me out on a stretcher when they want me to stop working. So,
Great, great.
okay.
You're still working, which is which it is a commendable feat. And this is exactly what your mother also did. I mean, I read in a chapter that she joined a company at the age of 16, and she left the same company at the age of 60. So this.
Sorry, I'd like to correct you over there. She did not join. She was not in one company the whole time. Okay, she
Okay,
was in. She started off in a company called Phipson's,
okay,
and then she went to Pakistan Tobacco. She was in Pakistan Tobacco for many years, and then she transferred to Sui Gas Transmission Company.
okay, great.
Yeah, so she was the longest time in Pakistan Tobacco and Sui Gas Transmission Company, in these two.
Uh,
And she would not have left Pakistan Tobacco. But you see, when we lost East Pakistan in 1971, then Pakistan Tobacco had to shrink and it had to retrench because they had factories and offices in East Pakistan, you see. So they were retrenching and they were cutting down staff, and many other companies knew this. So they started making offers to staff from Pakistan Tobacco because they knew that Pakistan Tobacco had excellent staff. So she got an offer from Sui Gas that, would you, and she spoke to her company. She said, look, I've received this offer. And they very kindly said, well, then I think it's better for you to take advantage of that because right now the company is not doing that well. So she went over to Sui Gas. But she was what is called a nester. She joined the company and she made a nest there. She didn't leave for any trivial reason. So,
okay.
yes.
Um, okay, when I was reading your book, it has a more of a storytelling style. I mean, being a
Yes.
teacher, you have written various chapters that trace the life, career, history of your mother, of your grandparents. So how emotional was that journey when you traced the life of your mother before you were born, and going through all the stories pertaining to your grandparents.
Yeah, you see, actually, these are all stories that I heard from my mother many times,
Mhm.
when I was growing up. So my mother would tell me about her childhood. She'd tell me about her experiences in Pakistan. Some of the stories I heard from my grandparents, from my aunt, from my uncles, you see. And then when my mother passed away, of course, I was grieving for her, and there was this tremendous sense of loss. And then I thought to myself, not only have I lost my mother, I have lost my last connection with the past, you see. And I said, if I want to keep that connection, particularly for my children, because you'll notice that my book is dedicated to my children.
Yes.
So if I want to keep that link, that connection with the past for my children, then I must do something about it. So, and besides that, I truly felt that my mother was an extraordinary woman, and I felt I wanted to share her with the world, you know. So those who knew her, they enjoy reading the book because it's like they are being with her again, they recognize her again. And those who didn't know her get a chance to meet a very interesting and extraordinary woman. And I think she's an inspiration to many people. So that was how I came to write the book. And the stories are all stories, as I told you, they're stories that would get told to me by my mother, my grandparents. You may have noticed one thing, Umar, that the first part of my book is told in third person,
Yes.
and then it switches to first person narrative.
Exactly.
And somewhere along the line when I was doing the book, I decided I would do this because the first part of the book is not my story. It is not a story that I am telling. It is a story that I am reporting. Do you understand?
Exactly.
So I put it in the third person because I felt that I wanted to stand back and I wanted to just present it. Where the first person begins is where I would say my memories begin, my own memories. So then it's
True.
me telling the story. You know,
So
Earlier
it's
it
like,
was,
yeah.
yeah,
So it's basically like two perspectives,
yes.
one from your side and one predating
Predating
your, yeah.
stories that I heard from my mother, from my grandparents, from everyone that I put together. But also, if you notice the style in which I tell those stories also as my mother's style, I think you can recognize my mother's voice there. When she's telling me stories of her childhood and she's telling me stories of her parents, you will be able to recognize my mother's voice there also, because her voice is in my head, telling me those stories.
Obviously.
So when I put them down, it's the same humorous style, that you will see in my mother's letters as well. I think you
Hmm.
can recognize the same tone.
Yes. So speaking about letters, you have included various letters which your mother wrote to you.
Yes.
Uh, back in those days, in the 70s, 80s, receiving a letter was a very joyous occasion. We didn't have
Wonderful.
any internet, we
Yeah,
didn't have
yeah.
any landlines. So please share with us that experience of writing a letter, sending it, and then receiving a reply.
You see, again, my mother and I both shared this love of reading and books. Okay. And those who love reading, they also tend to be writers. They like to express themselves in words, in language. So when we were separated, this was such a wonderful way of communicating with each other. So it was like we were talking to each other. And I must tell you that we did not even have access to a phone. Okay. My mother never had a phone at home. Okay. She only had access to a phone in her office. So, and you know how it is. You can't use your office phone for personal calls. So we couldn't even talk on the phone unless it was an emergency. And so we had to resort to letters. So I would just start writing and putting down, whatever I thought that I would want to share with her, little things of daily interest, so that she was still a part of my life. And then she shared so that I felt I was still a part of her life, even though we were far apart. And the excitement of receiving a letter, I cannot tell you, when you saw that sealed envelope and you picked it up and you felt the weight of it, like you felt it and you felt, okay, it's quite thick, good, good. There's a fat letter in here, something to read. The excitement is tremendous. And when my daughter went to college in the USA, my mother refused to email and all that. She says, I do not, she never bought a computer. So she says, she says, told my granddaughter, she said, my daughter, she says, you want to communicate with me, then you have to write letters. So my daughter was forced to write letters. And I tell her now, I say, don't you love the fact that you have letters from GM with you? Isn't it so precious to have something like that? Yeah.
I think letters from that you receive from your elders, the letters which I received from my grandmother when I was a teenager, those letters become your prized possessions. And
Yes.
even today, I can smell my grandmother's or aroma in
On the
everything,
letters.
everything that
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
that she.
it's so personal when you think that, that person's hands have held these letters.
Yes. Mm.
So it's very personal, and email and these things just cannot replace that feeling.
Yeah. Nothing. I think nothing can replace the essence of writing with a pen on a paper. Even if you have the most expensive laptop, the most expensive digital equipment, writing with your hand is something which is unparalleled. Speaking of letters, Lynette, I was going through the book and I saw this letter dated to 30th of July 1986,
Okay.
where it reads, "We saw two movies, Star Wars and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Both movies were terrific. The Crystal Palace has just received a new consignment of the kind of films I go for, so I plan to have a feast." These kind of letters show that your mother openly shared all the little details of her life, so that
Yes.
you remain updated with whatever is happening in her life.
It was like a daily conversation, but it was in the form of letters.
Great. So um, I mean, obviously, you haven't. I mean, I think you haven't added all the letters in the book, but how frequently was this letter writing process going on between you and your mother?
I think if you look in the book and you see the dates, you'll realize how frequent they are. Of course, I have not put in every letter, and I have not put in every part of every letter. I did a
Mm.
lot of curating. In fact, this was, I would say, the most difficult part of writing this book. Was I had to transcribe the letters first of all, type them all out, and then I had to decide which parts to take out, which to leave, which letters to input, because you must remember that I wanted to retain readability as well, for an outside reader. Every reader is not going to be interested in every letter, every detail
Obviously.
that's coming, you see. So I had to do that, but I would say very frequent. And I think, again, if you look at the thing, sometimes if my mother didn't receive a letter for a few days, do you see how desperate she gets in her next letter? And she even starts abusing me and saying, "You little swine, you haven't written to me. Have you forgotten me?"
And in some letters, your mother acknowledged that, okay, I've received your letters from
Yes.
this date, and date. So
Yes, that
I mean,
the post also sometimes was faulty. It took very long for letters to reach because this was what we call snail mail. This was not
exactly.
airmail. This was snail mail, yeah. So
One thing I wanted to ask you, in your book, there's a mention of how the Anglo-Indian community remained in one geographical area for a long time, and then you started. I mean, and you and your generation started, creating inroads with the Pakistani community. So, do
I
share
wouldn't say
some.
I'm sorry, I wouldn't say it was a geographical area. It was more a
Mhm.
cultural, a
Yes,
cultural
the
bubble,
cultural
bubble
divide.
that we were in. Yes, but I think you see, in the early days, there were so many of us. We had no need to look outside the community. But then, I would say the greatest impact was on emigration. On us was through emigration. Starting from the 50s and 60s, there was this exodus of people. And interestingly, the first place people started going to was England. I don't know whether
Hmm.
it's because they somehow identified with the British because the British had been in power for so long, but England was the promised land, you know. Then it became Canada. I
Hmm.
think the most popular place to go to was Canada in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Canada was everything. Then it became USA and then Australia. So, so gradually, as people were moving out, obviously the community was shrinking.
Hmm.
And
Exactly.
of course, you started making friendships outside as well, you know. So that is how I would say we became more integrated into Pakistani society.
Yes, integrated is a right word, and
Yes.
uh, I mean, if you look at our society or maybe our city, so what difference do you see in Karachi of today and the Karachi of the 50s and 60s?
I think it's just so big and so crowded that that feeling of unity has gone. um, it was a simpler time. There's no doubt about it. It was a much
Yes.
simpler time. And I think one very good example of unity is television. We had television came in around 1965. I was 10 years old. We had one channel, PTV. Okay, one channel. It started at 6 p.m. and it ended at 10 p.m. Now
Yes.
you tell me, the whole country is watching one channel. What greater unification do you need than that? We are all watching the same channel. We're listening to the same news. We are watching the same comedy shows. We're watching everything. So you see, when everyone is watching the same thing, you have your common topics of conversations. Now, you'd have these
Exactly.
wonderful Urdu dramas like
Mm.
Diware and Khuda Ki Basti and stuff like that. And, at the time that the drama, the next episode was on, the streets would be empty,
Exactly.
silent.
Yes.
Everyone has gone home to watch this. And then another thing is, you had one television set in the house. Everybody sat around it and watched television. Sometimes every house didn't even have a television. So in the mohalla, you'd have all the mohalle wale correcting at the one house which had a television. You see? So there was this sense of community and sharing and commonality, which I feel now has just, we are growing further and further apart with this sectarianism and this, prejudice against, different communities, the religious prejudices and ethnic prejudices. I feel that this is the sad thing about what has happened to us today.
True, and you have brought so many fond memories of that time. I mean, I remember people used to set their Barat timings according to the telecast time
Drama.
of a television
Yes,
drama,
yes.
and
Even the
I
English
still,
programs,
yeah.
even the English programs like The Saint and
Hmm.
those things, Mission Impossible and all them, they used to even set their timings by those. Even the English programs everybody enjoyed.
Yes, I still remember whenever we used to go out for gatherings or at marriage ceremonies, people used to talk just the way you said. People used to talk on common topics that they used to watch every day. Like Anak Wala Jin used to air at 5 p.m. Then
Yes.
there was Anch, Chand Grahan, and Sitara and Merunisa. All these
And
iconic dramas were born.
Sohail Rana's, was it Kalia? No, Sohail Rana's program in which he had all those children sitting and singing. I think
I
Nadia Hassan and all came from that program. Yeah, they were developed by that program.
Yeah, Kalia
Yeah.
was again something which is still cherished. We still remember Ubaidullah Beg Saab's Kasauti, which
Yes,
was a
wonderful program.
those
And that's
those those
another thing.
times.
I mean, right now, I would say on TV, it's mostly garbage.
Yes, unfortunately,
Frankly,
yes.
it's mostly garbage. There's nothing of worth to watch, very little of worth to watch on TV.
Okay.
There, you had stuff that appealed to ideas, to the intellect, to the emotions. It was, I don't know, it's terrible now. They're just trying to be sensational and get viewership.
That's the main problem. Okay, so coming back to your book, you mentioned that you had to work more on the letters so that you could fine tune them and put it accordingly. So when talking about the book in a holistic perspective, uh, was writing the book a challenge or was editing the entire book an even greater challenge?
I think editing, because you see, writing. In fact, what happened was when my mother passed away. Soon after she passed away, I started writing down all these stories as a way of dealing with my grief. Trying to just trying to heal. Help me to heal by putting it. It was like I was trying to hold on to her. So
Hmm.
I just started writing. I just started writing without thinking. Mind you, she passed away in 2009. So I'm talking about 2010. And here my book has come out in 2022. So it's taken a long time. The reason is that I did all that writing. I got it out of my system, whatever I wanted to write, my memories of her, everything. And then I put it aside because I had started a blog And I got this idea of making a book out of my blog, putting my blog posts together to make a book. And a friend of mine, in fact a friend of my daughter's, advised me. She said, look, she says, why don't you first do the book that is based on your blog, because you already know that people are reading your blog and that they enjoy it, right? So first do the book based on your blog, put that out, okay, and then when people read that book and like it, then put out the one on your mother. And it was such good advice, because you tell me, if you put out a book on your mother, people will look at it and who wants to read about somebody's mother? Why would I read about somebody's mother? You understand? But
Yeah.
because I wrote Made in Pakistan, and because people read that and they enjoyed it, I think that has also contributed to the fact that many people have bought this book, and many people are reading this book. So then when I came back to this book, I would say in about 2016 or so, I came back to this book. That's when I started trying to give it a structure, trying to turn it into a book of some weight, give it some sort of substance. Then I decided to include the letters. Then I had to, the letters, as I said, was very difficult. Then I had to decide on the structure, how do I structure it? So, yes, so editing, I think I must have done, after the whole thing was finished, after that, I must have done about 5 edits,
Great.
five
That is a
complete
very
edits.
tedious
Yeah.
process.
It is.
Editing is
It is. It's hard work. And
yes.
let me add another thing. The reason also it takes me so long is, remember, I'm a teacher. So I really only get time to focus on this in my summer vacation.
Obviously, obviously.
So we are talking about summer vacations. We are not talking about the whole year. Because you see, this is something, as a writer yourself, you understand. You need focus. You
Yes.
cannot be distracted, by preparing for classes, checking papers. You can't be distracted by that.
Even a slight distraction
Yes,
or a knock on the door is going to shatter your focus.
exactly. So you have to consider that these two books I wrote in a series of summer vacations. So don't count the number of years, just count the number of summer vacations. Yeah.
Great. So the blog that you mentioned, it was sort of a litmus test to how the book is going to fare later, right?
Yes. Yes.
And I think that this can be a good advice to aspiring writers, that they first start writing a blog, see how their writing is being perceived, and then go on for a major project like a book.
Yeah.
Uh, Something that you wish you would have added in the book. Is there something, some information that you think that
You see,
is
the thing is that every now and then I get a flash of something, a memory. So that's never going to end. Okay, that's never going to end. But there comes a time when you have to say, okay, enough. This is it. You know. So
uh,
I mean, I was just the other day, I was remembering how my mother, because politics and hate politics are so much on. There were a couple of politicians that she hated, and so their faces would come in the newspaper. So when she went out, if she bought some, she used to love going in the morning, doing her marketing, picking up a paratha and bringing it home for her breakfast. And then she'd tell us, I gave so and so the hot paratha treatment. What was that? She'd put the hot paratha on his face on the on the newspaper. Now you see, so little things like that, they keep coming back to me. They're not in the book. I mean, I can't help it. I can't remember every single thing
yes, exactly.
at the
Okay,
time.
mm, so coming at the title of the novel Bubbles, you have mentioned it briefly in your novel, that how your mother received this nickname of Bubbles.
Yes.
So please do share, without giving any spoilers to the readers, that
Well, she was a plump child. She was a very plump baby and child, so she was called Bubbles. And then I think after that, of course, she did not remain fat. She slimmed down a lot, especially when she went to boarding school. She used to become so thin that when she came home, her aunt used to call her Haddi. So, but anyway, I think later on the name signifies her personality rather than her body. It started out by describing her body because she was like a
Hmm.
round bubble, but I think in the end it represents her personality because she was always bubbling over with joy, with laughter. You know.
You have mentioned in one chapter that she was the life of a party. She used to be so
Yes.
spontaneous in cracking jokes, and any joke that offer that you may recall that she may have told to a gathering at home or
I
something.
mean, my book is full of them, Umar. I
No,
don't know which. I think I have given a lot. So
yeah,
she no, she
that's,
was. It didn't. She didn't have ready-made jokes.
hmm.
She would say something funny there and then. According to what was happening, and not just at a party. Even if she came home, and she was talking to us. I mean, like when she's telling us in in her company, she says, there was this man who he was over dramatic, because he says, oh, people are mistreating me. He climbed up on the window. He says, I'm going to commit suicide. So my mother says, I don't know why they stopped him. It would have been good riddance. So
Okay,
this sort of
great. We have a few comments with us. I'm going to share it on the screen. Uh, I can just click this. Yes, so Ruqayya Hamad is asking, what is your next book going to be about? Will you explore fiction?
No, Rukaya, I have never been able to write fiction. Even in school, we always had a choice in essay writing between writing a story and writing an essay, and I always wrote an essay because I could never write fiction. And that is why, strange enough, I never even considered myself a writer. It is only when I started my blog, which was again a series of memoirs, really, experiences, that I then realized, okay, I'm a writer of nonfiction. I'm a writer of memoirs. Not so. My next book will also be a memoir, and probably about further adventures of the Pakistani, the senior citizen. So
Great. Uh, Zarmina Raza says, Bubbles is such a lovely memoir,
yeah,
and
she's read
uh,
it.
and Usama Mushtaba, what a lovely conversation on the lost pleasure and beauty of letters. Looking forward to reading the book. Lost pleasure and beauty of letters. That is what we were talking about. That is what I discussed with my close friends. That this is I think letter writing was not a means of communication. It was more of an art, an art
Yes.
form. What to write, how much to write, which information to share,
Yeah.
and I remember when I was living abroad when I was a kid, my mother used to write letters to my grandmother, my nani, and she used to divide information in two parts so that there could be some content for the next letter which she's going to send to her next month.
Okay.
So I think that this is, and I think today, as you mentioned earlier, that email has removed all that essence of letter writing. It has become so mechanical that, and you also mentioned that your family members are still writing letters, which is something which we all have to do so that we can remain connected with ourselves.
But
And Ruqayya,
I'd like to mention over here that what email has done is, you see, letters have become now just a means of getting communicating, necessary things. It's not seen as something that is to be read with pleasure or received with pleasure. And as a result, I find now my students, although they are very respectful to me, but when they write an email, they write it in a way that I find very disrespectful. Hey, they'll start the email with hey or hello. And at first I was so angry because I said, I am not your yar dost. What do you mean by hey and hello? Right, dear Mrs. Vickaji, I hope you are well. This is the way you write a letter, you understand? So they don't even have any idea of how to write an email, they don't have an idea of how to address something to, they'll write like this to the principal also. It's not just me. And it's not because they are disrespectful or badtameez. They don't know any better.
yes, and I think email writing is considered more of a casual, formal mode of communication.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but
It's just for
just like
business. It's just for
yeah.
business, yeah. But
Um,
even business letters are supposed to have a certain formality.
yes, yes. We all have to follow a certain professional decorum when even
Yes.
speaking to someone, or even sending a formal letter. That is the essence. Uh, being a writer, what advice will you give to aspiring writers who are watching this episode, or who are going to watch it? Your advice to aspiring authors, or writers of Pakistan and the world.
I think that you should. I know people say write what you know, but I would say write what you genuinely feel and keep it real. Don't write what you think other people want to read or want to hear. You know, um, you need to write from the heart, because sometimes people write, because they say, "Oh, I want to write what will sell. I want to write what is popular." No, the best writing comes from inside, you know,
From your heart.
from your heart. And even if it's fiction, it has to be something that really comes from your heart and from your imagination if it's fiction. So,
Ruqayya, Ruqayya Hamad is asking, so Bubbles is your mom's nickname. What is your nickname?
now Rukaya is an ex student of mine and she's being cheeky here. I'm not going to answer her.
Okay, okay, okay.
Rukaya, I'll see you outside. Huh?
So I'm just going to read this testimonial by Mr. Salman Tariq, which was published back of the book. Um, It is not only a portrait of the author's mother, it is also a picture of the Anglo-Indian community to which she belonged, a community whose numbers have been sadly dwindling over the years. It gives us glimpses as well of the changing patterns of life over the years in the metropolis of Karachi, by Salman Tariq Qureshi, a poet and columnist. Uh, how do you view the Anglo-Indian community that was living in Karachi when you were growing up, and the one which you are living with today? So over the years, what changes have you
Different.
seen in your?
No, first of all, there's hardly any Angloan community left. Okay,
Hmm.
there's hardly anybody left. So very, very few people. There are little pockets, of families here and there. So it's not there anymore. But I have a circle of very close, very precious friends, and mostly Muslim, some Christian, some Parsi, and it's a different. I mean, they're also very dear to me. I enjoy their company, but you have different ways of enjoying company of different people. Now, for example, in 2019, I visited the USA, visited my very old friends Roland and Vicky. You'll find them mentioned in both my books, in Made in Pakistan and in Bubbles, and Arthur. These are my three very, very close friends. And I went and I visited them, and when I went there, it was, and then another old friend of ours from Karachi, Lionel, he joined us as well, and I hadn't seen him in like 40 years. And we were right back to our youth. We were like teenagers again. And the way that we interacted and we sat around and we sang and we laughed and we joked, we were just back to that again. Now, that I don't have with my present friends, but that's fine. Different friends give you different things, different gifts, so.
There was this uh, part in your. Okay, one question. Before starting every before starting every new part, somewhere you have added a prose, somewhere you have added poetry. So was
Yes,
that something
dictation.
spontaneous, or did you
Yes,
think about it?
it's spontaneous. Being a literature person, being a literature teacher and someone who reads a lot and stuff like that, all of this is a part of me. So, whenever I had to write something, some poem or some reference would come back to me that was relevant to what I was about to write. And if there wasn't, then I would look it up, you know.
Just to create a reference point for that particular
Yes,
chapter.
yes, yes. And it sort of evokes the ambience and the spirit of that section. For example, the first, if you allow me to just read that out, the
Sure, sure.
first, yes, the first part, which is about my mother's childhood, and I've quoted a stanza from The Builders by Longfellow, and the stanza is, for the structure that we raise, time is with materials filled. Our todays and yesterdays are the blocks with which we build. So, this referred to the fact that my mother's childhood was the blocks from which her character and her personality was built. The
Absolutely.
kind of parents she had, the kind of background she had, you know.
Um, and speaking of parents and community, uh, I mean, obviously, you before publishing this book, you would have selected beta readers, just to give
Yes.
you. So who were they, and what were their initial thoughts and suggestions about the book?
They like them. One of them is right here, Zermina, and she read it. Shaza Fatma Heather, she's a very great supporter of mine, and someone who encourages me a lot to write. She's a writer herself. You may have heard of her. She's
Yes,
published
yes.
two books. Yeah. So she read it, and my friend Duriya Kazi, she read it. So I had several people reading. Friend Arthur read it, and I've acknowledged them all in my book. You know, they were my first readers, my first responders, and I chose people who knew my mother, like Arthur, and people who did not know my mother, like Zemina.
Okay.
And because I wanted to see how, you know, because you see,
Hmm.
those who knew my mother, they might be influenced by emotion, but
Hmm.
both types said, yes, it's good, they liked it,
So
they
so
encouraged, but they also gave me criticism, like they'd say, I think you should do this, or I think you should put in more of this, you know.
Okay. And speaking of beta readers and first responders, how, I mean, if you want to share this with the aspiring writers, how important is to share your first manuscript with those selected few to
Very
gain.
important, very important, because you see, as a writer, you are too close to your work to be able to judge it impartially.
Hmm.
You must call in people, and of course they have to be people who are not going to be afraid to tell you if something is not right, like Shazaf.
I mean,
So
honesty is something which is going to add value to the
and,
manuscript.
and let me tell you, it's not easy, because again, as a writer yourself, you must know, when you write a book, it's like your baby. So you're showing your baby to the world, and somebody says, "Oh my God, this their eyes are kana. Oh my God, you want to take out a knife and you want to stab them. How dare you say this about my child?" You see, so you have to also be very mature about it. You have to be able to accept criticism. But having said that, you examine the criticism very objectively, stand back, look at it, decide, but ultimately the decision has to be yours. You are the author.
Yes.
And if somebody says that, I don't like this and this is not right or something like this, you don't have to agree. You must consider it very, very seriously and impartially. And if they are right, accept it. But if in your heart you feel they are not right, then don't accept it.
True, true.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
you brilliantly explained how writers see their writing as a baby. I see my writing as if I'm cooking food and I'm
Yeah.
going to present it to the readers. And
Exactly.
yeah, so I would like to request you to read something from the book, uh, a passage maybe. Uh, I really like that part where you talked about your mother coming to your rescue and making that fatal apple turnover pie because there were so many fruits in your home.
My,
That's
the funny thing about my mother, Omar, is that she was not a cook. Okay, she worked all her life, right, in an office. She worked from nine
mm,
to five, so she did not really do the domestic part of the household, right? And later on, when she was living on her own, she would, okay, she had three or four dishes that she could make nicely, and that was it. She was not any great cook. So giving recipe, the very fact that she's giving me a recipe in itself is a joke, because she always used to say, when she came to my house, she used to always say, I'm coming to your house so I can eat food, some good food. Because in my house she would get nice food because I cook quite well, you see. But she was never ever a good cook. Anyway, when I was in Jairam and Akora, in some of her letters, she would send me these recipes that she had made up. Of course, they were
yes.
jokes, and you will get the idea now when I read a bit to you. Okay, so this is part of my letter. Sorry, this is what I've said at the end of one chapter, end of one thing. I've said, around this time, Adi was my husband, Adi was transferred to Akora Khatak factory. The bungalow assigned to us had a beautiful garden with roses in front and a wonderful variety of fruit trees at the back. I excitedly reported our plentiful harvests of apricots, grapefruit, loquats, apples, etc., while also lamenting the fact that despite my desperate efforts, it was impossible to either eat, give away, or preserve it all. My mother came to the rescue with one of her special recipes. The recipe is called Mother's Fatal Apple Turnover. Ingredients: 1 spade, 1 large glass tumbler. Method: using the spade, dig a large pit under the overloaded apple tree. Knock down all the apples you can with the spade handle and rake them into the pit. Cover the pit with earth and beat the surface smooth with the flat of the spade. Return to the house and open large bottle of last year's potent wine. We used to make homemade wine, by the way. Drink the lot using the glass tumbler. When empty, break bottle on heads of recalcitrant kids, snarl at nagging husband, retire to bed and enjoy a good night's sleep. So
So,
that would be a glimpse into my mother.
these replies and these recipes also show her bubbly nature,
Absolutely.
to
Absolutely. Yeah.
explore life, to have fun with it, to bring a life on, to bring a smile on your face. I would also like you to comment on that letter. I'm not aware on which page that was, in which your mother said that she has bought a new typewriter and that now she's going to use it. Typewriters again are something which are not they're almost
Used anymore.
obsolete.
Yes. Yes.
They are kept in museums. So that was also a facet of our communication method. So
Yeah.
so did you ever write with a typewriter, or were you always a handwriting
No,
person?
no. I used to write by hand, but my mother, because she worked in an office and she started life as a stenotypist. Okay, in those days, girls who wanted to work in an office, they would go and take a course in shorthand and typing. You see, so my mother did a course in shorthand and typing, and then she went to work, and she used to type very fast. Her fingers used to just fly across the keys, and she didn't even look. She would be looking into some other place and typing. And typing on a typewriter, it's not like a computer where if you make a mistake you can just delete. You
Yeah.
have to use correction fluid, that white correction fluid on the
Yes.
paper and all that kind of thing. But she never made a mistake. She was so expert at it, so she was much more comfortable typing.
Great. So we are almost coming to the end of this session. Any message that you would like to share with the viewers? Uh, a message that you would like to share with the viewers? And
um I don't know really. I mean, all I can say is I would love you to buy the book because I think that you will enjoy it. I want you to meet my mother through this book and enjoy her company. And one thing that occurred to me today, if you read the book, you will think, I don't know why my voice is echoing. Is there a problem?
No, it's okay. It's okay.
All right. Uh, if you um, if you read the book, my mother will come across as someone who is full of confidence, and yet there was something very humble about her. I mean, for example, this whole thing, the book, the publicity, this program, she would feel very shy about it. She wouldn't want to come forward. So she was a very humble person. And my only message to writers, aspiring writers, is keep writing, don't give up. The journey to publishing is a long and hard one, but it is well worth it. Okay. And the message to readers is please buy and enjoy the book.
Great.
That's
Great.
what it
Thank
was about.
you. Thank you, Lynette, for your time, for taking your time to speak to us, to speak to share your thoughts on this book and to connect with the readers. It was lovely talking to you, and we hope that your third book receives the same or higher praise. And hope to see you soon. Keep writing, keep smiling, stay blessed. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Omari. Thank you for being such a great moderator. Thank you. Okay. Bye bye.
Thank you so much.